Imagine for a moment that every single thought you are having right now is building, brick by brick, the path you will walk tomorrow. This isn't a metaphor. It's not poetry. It's a silent, constant, relentless mechanism. And most people live their entire lives without realizing they hold the very key to change. There are those who blame fate, those who blame circumstances, and even those who blame God. But there's a detail almost no one sees. The mind doesn't just interpret reality. It manufactures reality. Everything you fear pursues you. Everything you believe guides you. And everything you determine happens. Perhaps you haven't noticed, but every morning you wake up saying, "I can't," you are watering a seed. Every time you repeat, "It won't work," you are signing your own destiny before even trying. But today is different. Today you will understand what thousands discovered too late. You have the power to completely rebuild your life, starting from the inside out. And in this video, I will show you, step by step, how to transform what you think into who you become. Before we continue, click subscribe. Here you'll find stories, reflections, and teachings that change lives, and can change yours too. Don't miss the upcoming chapters. Let's go together. Ever since humans learned to think, they also learn to suffer from their own thoughts. The mind is the birthplace of great victories and the greatest failures. It is a silent battlefield, without gunshots, without explosions, but with consequences profound enough to alter the course of an entire life. And most strikingly, the majority of people enter this war every day without realizing they are fighting. Imagine someone who wakes up early, but opens their eyes already tired, because the first thing they hear in their own head is, "I can't take this anymore." It's a small, simple phrase, almost automatic, but it carries the force of a decree. It's as if the person signs, before even getting out of bed, a spiritual document affirming that the day will be heavy, that nothing will go right, and that life will be just a repetition of old pains. That single phrase, by itself, plants the seed of a sad reality. Now imagine another person facing the same problem, waking up with the same difficulties, the same bills to pay, the same fears. But when they open their eyes, they say to themselves, "Today I try again. Today might be different." They are not denying reality. They are not ignoring the problem. They have simply decided not to surrender the power of their own life to the negative thoughts knocking at the door early in the morning. This is the point almost no one understands. It's not what happens to you that determines who you become. It's what you think about what happens to you. The mind reacts to what you say as if it were receiving orders. If you say, "I am weak," it finds evidence of weakness. If you say, "I am capable," it seeks ways to prove your capability. The mind is like an obedient employee, but without critical judgment. It doesn't question, doesn't filter, doesn't analyze. It simply executes what you repeat daily. And what you repeat daily is shaping your life more than any external circumstance. Now think about this. How many times have you exaggerated a fear? How many times have you imagined the worst-case scenario? How many times have you spent hours trapped in thoughts that only existed inside your head? And how did that affect your mood, your posture, your hope? The mind has the power to create monsters that don't exist, and also the power to reveal strengths you never imagined you had. It all depends on where you place your attention. Science has a name for this: attentional focus. Spirituality has another: faith. But the mechanism is the same. What you strengthen internally manifests externally. If you feed anxiety, it grows. If you feed courage, it grows. If you feed faith, it becomes a force that moves mountains. And this idea became crystal clear for thousands of people who discovered the DCD method: doubt, critique, determine. A simple, direct, powerful method which we will delve into further. For now, focus on the first great truth. The mind is the field where the most important battles of your life are fought. If you win within your mind, the external world becomes merely a consequence. If you lose within your mind, the external world transforms into an enemy. But here's the detail that changes everything. The mind is not your enemy. The mind is a tool. You are the commander. And it is now that many people waste their own story, because they believe that thought is something spontaneous, uncontrollable, random. But it is not. Thoughts are habits, and like all habits, they can be changed. There's an old saying that goes, "I cannot prevent birds from flying over my head, but I can prevent them from building nests." That's it. Negative thoughts appear. Fears appear. Doubts appear. But when you feed them, when you repeat them, when you turn them into identity, that's when they take root. The question is not, why do I think bad things? But rather, why do I let these things dominate me? And the answer is simple and harsh. Because you were never taught to observe your own mind at work. You were never taught to notice when a belief is born, grows, and begins to control every decision you make. In this chapter, I want you to do a simple exercise. Observe your thoughts as one observes the sea. Waves come, waves go, but you are not the sea, you are the observer. When you understand this, when you realize that thoughts are events and not identity, the internal war changes completely. You stop fighting against yourself and start choosing what you wish to strengthen. And that choice, that simple choice, is the beginning of a new life. If there is anything that imprisons more than chains, more than walls, more than locked doors, it is the inner voices. They don't scream, they don't appear, they have no face, but they are there, always, influencing who you believe you are, and often preventing you from becoming who you can be. These voices have many names: fear, doubt, guilt, shame, comparison. Some sound like childhood memories, others like criticisms from people who, in truth, never knew anything about your soul. But they all have one thing in common: they speak of limits, never of possibilities. And what almost no one realizes is that these voices, so intimate, so silent, were not born within you. They were implanted. Yes, implanted. Every criticism you heard in childhood, every "it won't work," every "that's just how you are," every time someone laughed at a dream of yours, every unfair comparison, every misinterpreted failure, all of this accumulated over the years and transformed into internal echoes that you learn to call "my mind." But it's not your mind. They are memories disguised as identity. That's why so many intelligent people consider themselves incapable. Kind people consider themselves insufficient. Creative people consider themselves mediocre. Strong people consider themselves weak. Not because they actually are these things, but because they were trained, often by life itself, to believe it. Now imagine for a moment that each of these voices is a person sitting at a large table inside your head. There is fear sitting in a dark corner, always ready to say, "What if it goes wrong?" Beside it, doubt, whispering, "Are you good enough?" Closer to the door, shame, quietly murmuring, "Better not try, they'll laugh at you." And of course, guilt, always leaning over the table, recalling all the small mistakes of the past, as if it were a historian of failure. Now stop and think. How many times have these voices been responsible for you giving up on something before even starting? How many opportunities have you let slip away? How many relationships have you sabotaged due to insecurity? How many dreams have you left dormant inside an emotional drawer you never opened? And here's the most painful point. People think these voices are absolute truths, but they are just repetitions of old pains. Doubt only exists because one day you tried something and someone made you feel small. Shame only exists because at some point they laughed at you. Guilt only exists because you were taught to believe that making mistakes is unforgivable. Fear only exists because at some point in your life, there were no arms to hold you when you fell. But here is the revelation that changes everything. These voices can be re-educated. You don't need to expel them. You don't need to fight against them. You don't need to silence them by force. You just need to teach them that you are no longer that vulnerable child, nor that insecure teenager, nor that adult who carried more burdens than they should have. You grew up. And when someone grows internally, the table changes. Fear is still there, but you sit at the head. Doubt still exists, but you have more arguments. Shame still speaks, but you don't obey it. Guilt still reminds. But you now know that mistakes don't define who you are. They define who you are becoming. And this is where something essential comes in: the internal dialogue. What do you say to yourself today? What kind of conversation exists within you when no one is looking? Do you talk to yourself like an enemy or like an ally? Because a large part of your life depends on this. The people who transform the world are not the smartest, nor the strongest, nor the richest. They are the ones who learn to talk to themselves powerfully. They are the ones who, when they fall, say, "I'll try again." In the face of fear, they say, "I'll go anyway." In the face of doubt, they say, "I trust myself." In the face of pain, they say, "This does not define me." In the face of life, they say, "I am willing." And these phrases, repeated with intention, create something few people know: internal authority. Internal authority is when your voice becomes stronger than the echo of memories. When you start to believe in yourself more than in your traumas. When your mind becomes your ally, not your saboteur. But this doesn't happen out of nowhere. It is built. It is trained. It is a process. And it begins with the simple decision to pay attention to the voices. Because when you identify an internal lie, it loses half its strength. When you question that lie, it loses even more. And when you replace it with a new truth, it disappears. From here, we will delve into the method that transforms this process into a concrete path. Doubt, critique, determine. The DCD. It will be your map, your shield, your tool. And for many, the key to a totally new life. There comes a moment in every human being's life when they realize that it is no longer possible to live by reacting to thoughts that arise automatically, because these thoughts, when unobserved, repeat old patterns and create realities that have nothing to do with what the person wishes to become. It is precisely at this turning point that the need for a method arises, a kind of internal compass capable of reorganizing what once seemed chaotic and inevitable. The DCD, doubt, critique, determine, emerges as a tool that appears simple at first glance, yet is profound enough to modify how the mind interprets the world. Unlike the magical solutions promised by empty rhetoric, DCD works at the core of human transformation because it acts on the mental process that precedes any behavior, any emotion, and any decision. It is a silent yet powerful change, almost like altering the internal software that controls one's entire life. The first step, doubt, is more revolutionary than it seems. Because doubting a negative thought is like turning on a light in a room where you've lived in darkness for years. For the first time, you realize that thought is not an absolute truth, but merely a spontaneous phrase your mind produced based on old memories, accumulated fears, and experiences that no longer represent who you are today. When you doubt, even for a second, you break the illusion that you must obey the thought. And this small rupture is enough to create space, an interval, a crack of freedom between you and what your mind insists on repeating. Doubting is the beginning of all psychological liberation because it allows you to stop accepting as truth everything that weakens you. It is the gesture of someone waking up from the hypnosis of their own mental patterns. The second step, critique, deepens this liberation by requiring you to confront the negative thought as if you were facing someone trying to deceive you. It is at this moment that you question the origins of this thought, its logic, its veracity, its hidden intentions. When you critique, you discover that many ideas that have accompanied you for years are fragile, incoherent, and completely disconnected from present reality. You realize, for example, that the fear that kept repeating "you will fail" was in fact a reflection of an old moment when you lacked maturity, emotional resources, or internal strength. By critiquing, you separate past and present, identify exaggerations, dismantle dramatizations, and realize that your interpretations have always been more decisive than the facts themselves. Critique is the hammer that breaks the invisible chains that the mind never questioned. But it is the third step, determine, that truly transforms life. To determine means to take control of the mind's creative process and replace the negative thought with a conscious decision oriented towards what you want to build. It is at this point that you decide who you will be in the next moment. To determine is to say to yourself, I choose this path. I choose this mental posture. I choose this vision of the future. And most importantly, I choose to become someone greater than the thoughts that sabotage me. Determination takes root in the internal field, establishes purpose, and directs energy towards corresponding actions. It's like adjusting a camera lens to see clearly what was once out of focus. A well-constructed determination is an order, and the mind responds to orders with concrete movements, aligning emotions, perceptions, and behavior in a subtle yet continuous way. The strength of DCD lies precisely in its sequence. First you doubt, and the negative thought loses authority. Then you critique, and it loses structure. Finally, you determine, and it loses space, being replaced by something that truly represents you. It is a process of mental re-education so simple it fits into 3 words, yet so profound it can change destinies. And if you practice it repeatedly, you will create a new pattern, build new neural pathways, consolidate a new identity. Because the mind learns through repetition. And when you repeat positive decisions with the same frequency that you once repeated fears, your entire life begins to reorganize, almost as if new chapters begin to be written in areas that were once paralyzed. Imagine DCD as someone who knocks on the door of your unconscious every day to remind you that you no longer need to live on autopilot. Doubt clears the ground, critique removes the rubble, determination builds the new house. And when this house stands, solid, rooted, structured, negative thoughts may still appear, but they no longer have a place to settle. They arrive, but they do not become masters of your story. You learn to watch them pass with maturity, like someone who knows that a thought is just an event, not a sentence. And perhaps the most important thing is to understand that DCD does not just transform what you think, but transforms the relationship you have with your own mind. It teaches you to occupy the position of internal protagonist, of commander, of someone who deliberately chooses who they want to be, instead of being dragged by impulses. DCD is an invitation to emotional autonomy, to awakened consciousness, to a life lived with intention. And when someone lives with intention, there is no force in the world capable of preventing that person from moving forward. In the next chapters, we will explore how to apply DCD in the most difficult situations, in the deepest fears, and in challenges that seem impossible, because it is precisely in these arenas that the mind often tries to betray us. And it is precisely in these arenas that DCD becomes a powerful weapon. Throughout life, many people believe that changing one's mind is merely a matter of willpower, as if simply thinking positively were enough to transform everything around them. But the reality is more complex and, at the same time, more fascinating. There is a consistent body of scientific evidence demonstrating that what you think not only influences your emotions, but alters body chemistry, reorganizes brain connections, activates or deactivates behaviors, and impressively, transforms your perception of reality. The mind is not an abstract space where vague thoughts float. It is a living, dynamic, electrical, chemical, sensitive system that responds to every phrase, every mental image, every memory, and every interpretation that arises within you. When someone becomes aware of this, they realize that they were never at the mercy of luck. They were, in fact, at the mercy of their own internal programming. To understand the depth of this, imagine that the brain is constantly reorganizing internal routes called neural circuits, which strengthen or weaken according to the frequency with which you think about something. When you repeat a negative thought, for example, I can't, I'm not good enough, this always goes wrong for me. The brain understands that this path is important, relevant, recurrent, and begins to reinforce this track, making these thoughts more automatic and easier to access. Similarly, when you repeat a positive belief, when you affirm yourself capable, when you determine a new path, the brain also begins to strengthen these circuits. Science calls this process neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to remodel, grow, and adapt. In other words, you literally remodel your mind by choosing what you think. But there is something even deeper happening at the emotional level. Every thought produces a set of chemical substances that create physical sensations. Thoughts of fear generate adrenaline and cortisol, preparing the body for a threat that often only exists in the imagination. Thoughts of possibility, on the other hand, release dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, substances associated with courage, well-being, connection, and the impulse to act. That is, you don't just think, you feel what you think. And by feeling, you begin to act according to what you feel. And by acting, you reinforce the story your mind is telling. It is a self-perpetuating cycle, unless someone consciously intervenes to alter it. This is the beauty of transformation. It always begins within. When a person understands that the body believes what the mind says, even if it's not real, they finally realize the magnitude of the responsibility they have for their own internal words. Not because words have some isolated mystical power, but because they are commands that the brain interprets as operating directives. When you tell yourself, "I won't succeed," the brain reduces energy, decreases focus, dampens motivation, because it understands there's no reason to try. When you say, "I can, I will, I am capable," the brain organizes itself to seek possibilities, paths, resources, and ways of execution. The mind doesn't choose for you. It executes what you choose, consciously or unconsciously. And here's another crucial point. Most people live completely unaware of the thoughts they produce. They walk through life repeating internal phrases that did not originate from them, but from traumatic experiences, family criticisms, comparisons with other people, accumulated frustrations over the years. They carry voices that are not their own, and, without realizing it, turn these voices into a belief system. Science calls this cognitive modeling. The mind learns mental patterns from childhood, society, culture, and then repeats them as if they were natural. And so the person grows up believing they are shy, incapable, anxious, untalented, even when none of this is part of their true identity. It's just old programming, not a sentence. It is precisely why methods like DCD work so well. They interrupt automatism. When you doubt a thought, you activate different areas of the brain responsible for analysis and decision-making. When you critique the thought, you involve regions associated with logic and consciousness. When you determine something new, you activate areas related to motivation, the future, and action. The brain responds to DCD as if it were being instructed to update its internal software. And it does update. Not all at once, not overnight, but with repetition, consistency, intention. Because the mind is like a muscle. It strengthens what you practice most. But perhaps the most transformative element is understanding that thoughts are not reflections of reality. They are shapers of it. Two people can experience the same situation and interpret it in completely opposite ways. One might see a threat, another an opportunity. One might see failure, another learning. One might see the end, another a new beginning. It is interpretation that determines emotion, emotion that determines action, and action that determines the outcome. The mind does not describe the world. It constructs it from the internal lenses you choose to carry. And when someone understands this dynamic, they finally realize that they are not condemned to be a result of the past. Transformation happens the moment you decide to observe your thoughts with maturity, question your beliefs with courage, and choose new determinations with intention. Change begins when you abandon the posture of a victim of circumstances and assume the position of architect of your own mind. It is at this point that science and spirituality meet. Both affirm that life changes when you change what you believe about it. And now that we have reached the end of this journey, perhaps you can perceive with greater clarity something that has always been present, but never named with such distinctness. True transformation does not happen on the day you achieve something great. It does not begin the moment the world finally recognizes your worth, nor does it arise when life decides to smile upon you. It begins when you decide to assume, in the silence of your own interior, that you are no longer willing to live in the shadow of thoughts that diminish you. Real change happens when you understand that the mind can be your worst enemy or your greatest ally, and that choice, that intimate, almost sacred decision, belongs only to you. Perhaps it is the first time you realize that most of the pains, fears, and blockages you carried were not trials from the universe, nor punishments, nor signs that you were incapable. They were reflections of old interpretations that you accepted as immutable truths. And now, as you take a deep breath and perceive the intensity of what you have heard, perhaps you feel something that is not exactly euphoria, nor hope, but a kind of silent awakening, as if an inner door has finally opened. This door reveals something so simple and so profound. You no longer need to repeat the same old story, because there is within you a strength that was dormant, but never ceased to exist, waiting only for you to summon it. It doesn't matter what happened before. It doesn't matter how many times you fell, how many times you doubted yourself, or how many opportunities you let slip away out of fear. What matters is that from now on, you know you can doubt what limits you, critique what imprisons you, and determine what frees you. You know that the mind responds to what you choose to repeat. You know that life begins to reorganize when you change the way you talk to yourself. And more than that, you now know that within you lies the capacity to rebuild identity, strength, and purpose. True transformation does not happen with a shout, but with a silent decision. It does not begin with noise, but with a new consciousness that grows within and begins to occupy spaces where before there was only fear. And perhaps this is precisely the moment your turning point begins. The moment you realize you can be greater than what hurt you, greater than what they told you, greater than what you believed for so long. This is the instant you become the author of your own story. And when someone decides to be an author, the whole world shifts its position. If this video spoke to you, touched your mind, moved your heart, and opened a door within you, then I ask you, subscribe to the channel now. Here we build stories, reflections, learnings, and journeys that strengthen the soul and reorganize the mind. Each new video is an invitation for you to become the best version of yourself, one step at a time, always with depth, truth, and intention. Click, subscribe, activate the notification bell, and walk with me on this journey of internal transformation. Because life changes when the mind changes, and your change can begin today.